And now joining us today in the studio is Micah Lakin-Avni, an Israeli businessman, attorney, and activist. He serves as the chairman of Voices of Israel, a public-private partnership aimed at combating anti-Israel sentiment. In October 2015, Micah's father, Richard Lakin, was murdered by Hamas terrorists in an attack on bus number 78 in Jerusalem. After his father was murdered, Micah wrote an op-ed in the New York Times entitled "The Facebook Intifada," which was one of the first times the role of social media in the spread of terror was brought to light. Since then, he's led a successful campaign to get Hamas and Hezbollah removed from mainstream social media. Micah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Lida.
So can you tell us a little bit about the terrorist attack that murdered your father and about your experiences?
Sure. So my father was a kind, gentle person, a retired elementary school principal. He was on a bus riding home from a doctor's appointment one day in Jerusalem, and two Hamas terrorists boarded the bus and shot him and stabbed him brutally. He was in intensive care, unconscious for 10 days. I sat by his side that entire time, and the day after he was attacked, Hamas put out a reenactment video where they showed how the attack took place, and it was an instructional video to teach children, little kids, how to go out and do similar attacks. And that video went completely viral, and it was seen tens of millions of times around the world on Facebook and on YouTube. And during the time I was sitting next to my father's bed as he was dying, I started studying this, and I saw that terror had just run rampant on social media. Hamas, Hezbollah were inciting people, they were recruiting people, they were raising money. It was all over the place, and nobody was talking about it. And I had this burning energy to do something about it, and I decided to try to create a pressure storm to stop it. I started writing op-ed pieces in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Newsweek, many other places. I appeared on television in the United States on almost every channel. I helped initiate lawsuits. I helped produce movies, spoke at universities, Harvard, Yale, and it brought the issue to light. Many other people started talking about it, and there was so much pressure placed on Facebook and YouTube that they eventually retained executive-level vice presidents and put policies in place, retained thousands of people to monitor social media to remove terror. And within 2 years, you could no longer find Hamas or Hezbollah or ISIS on mainstream social media. So I saw that we were able to have an impact on that. It was something that I did personally together with lots of pro-Israel organizations. Governments didn't really take part in this. And so it sort of ended there. And then I kind of went back to my day job.
And so, I want to fast forward to October 7th, 2023. What role has social media played in this war? I mean, it seems as though Israel is really losing on the social media front. Maybe you can shed some light on that.
Sure. So we're losing in a big way. And the first thing you need to do if you want to deal with a problem is say it out loud. We're losing in a big way. We're getting creamed. If you look at the numbers on TikTok, on Facebook, on YouTube, it doesn't matter where. The anti-Israel rhetoric and the supporters of our enemies are just running rampant, and they're outnumbering us 10 to 1, 100 to 1. It depends where you're looking. And so you have to ask, how does that happen? Why are they able to do that? And there's a few reasons that happen. First off, they put a lot of planning into it. They understood that information can be used in warfare, and so they weaponized social media, something that here in Israel we did not understand on a government level, on a military level. So they put a lot of planning into it, they put a lot of money into it, and they've taken advantage of a couple things that social media allows. One is fake news, that you can say anything you want. So you can just say, Gaza is an open-air prison, Israel is doing genocide, and you can repeat that 1 million times. That's the first thing. Second thing that social media allows is to create an echo chamber. So if you see somebody's bought into that, you can start to pump them with that, and you can say it 1,000 times in 1,000 different ways, and it becomes a reality for them. The third thing is technology, it's bots. You can basically create fictitious accounts to impact the algorithms on social media, and our enemies have spent lots of time and money preparing for this moment. So on October 7th, immediately after this started happening, social media went wild, and it didn't go wild just because of the event. It went wild because there were bots in place and ready to start attacking us and start putting out this anti-Israel propaganda.
So essentially a war on another front. And how do we change this trajectory? I mean, how can Israel win this information war, this social media war?
Okay, so we have to change it, first of all, because we need international support, we need American support to back us up in our war against terror and jihadists. So after we recognize the problem, we need to recognize that it's a war and that it's not social media as we understand it at home. I'll just make a video and share it with my friends and that will have some influence. It's war, so we need to treat it as such. And that means combating our enemies in warlike manners. It may mean influencing algorithms within social media companies, actually attacking our enemies and social media companies to shift these things. Because the fact that TikTok promotes Palestinian rhetoric 100 times more than Israeli is an actual attack on our sovereignty as a country, and we have to fight back. So we need to fight back on a technology level, and we have the ability to do it, but it requires a government to prioritize that. Also, lots of money needs to be spent doing this. There's just no way around it. To counter all this stuff, you need massive, massive investment in distribution of content, creation of content, and actual technology, which is not being spent. And finally, I think there's the issue of regulation. So I talked about this for years, that we need to regulate social media. In America, it really started to gain ground. Donald Trump, right before he lost the election, started talking about changing Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which is basically the blanket protection that social media companies get. He didn't make that happen. Joe Biden, after he was elected, wrote an op-ed in the New York Times suggesting the same change. The social media has become so strong in America and their lobby so powerful that they didn't allow that to happen yet. But basically, it will need to be regulated if we want to ever stop this.
And so you have a very deep understanding of the field. I mean, how do you see social media impacting Israel moving forward?
Okay, so our existence is very deeply tied in to the success of Western civilization and Western democracy. And social media is basically undermining Western civilization. It's creating massive, massive polarization within the United States, within Europe, and within Israel. And it's doing that for the reasons I mentioned, because they don't have any standard of truth that they're accountable to. They create these echo chambers, and they're just so big. Amazon is actually a threat to the American government. They control so much information, so much data. Facebook is a threat to the government. They control more information and more data than we can possibly conceive. And there's actually a battle going on now between the social media titans and the American government. And we're going to have to see who wins. And if the American government doesn't move forward and regulate social media in the very near future, they're going to lose. And we in Israel are at the forefront of this. We're sort of the canary in the coal mine. And we need to take the first step. We need to talk about regulation here in Israel. And I've lobbied Knesset members before and ministers, and I've spoken to almost everybody, and they just don't see the problem. And
so regulation really does seem to be the key moving forward.
Yes.
Micah, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you for having me.